Tony, he's Mike, and we are here to do a quick and dirty on Denis Villeneuve's Dune, which just dropped on HBO Max, and we're here to let you know, should you watch it, and share our thoughts on it. So, this is a movie I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Was very disappointed when it was pushed back to this year. Was thrilled that I didn't have to go to a movie theater to see it. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. But having seen it on a 65-inch screen, I'm going to say I understand why people would want to see this in a movie theater, because this is a film that was made to look and be epic in scope.
Yeah, the sense of scale in this film is great in just about every aspect of it. The settings, the objects, the battles. I mean, everything is meant to be watched in the theater. And I kind of shamed myself for actually going to the theater and watching it myself. But you know, it's there. The only thing that I think lacks scale in this isn't what's on screen, was actually was kind of missing from screen, and that is the scale of the politics involved in the movie. And I know they get a chance to really do it because it's only part of it, but at the same time, it's all there at the beginning, you know, where they talk about the importance of Arrakis and things like that, but you don't get a sense of the scale, like this really affects the whole universe there. And I think part what kind of detracts from that is you don't see the Emperor there actually give his own direct commentary, and you don't see the behind the scenes meeting with him and the Spacing Guild and stuff like that, which you get from the David Lynch version of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, first off, I'm just gonna say I love this. I loved everything about it. I love the look of it. I love the feel of it. I love the casting of it. I love the performances of it, and I love the scope of it. I also have to say that I have to go back and watch this film again, because I've seen the David Lynch film so many fucking times that lines of dialogue that happen in specific scenes are going through my head, even though that's not what's being said on the screen in front of me.
Same here. I was waiting for one line in particular. I never got it, and that was,
"Tell me of your home world, Uso."
Never got it. I was waiting for it. Never got it.
Well, I was going to say, it's not that you haven't gotten it. It's that you haven't gotten it yet, because he's not given his Fremen name, Uzul, which is the strength at the base of a pillar. He has not been given his Fremen name yet. At the end
but that was given as, that was presented as a vision in the David Lynch version of it.
Actually, Muad'Dib was presented in the vision.
No. Sean Young asked him multiple times before he even met her, "Tell me of your homeworld, Uso."
Yes, I'm sorry, you're absolutely correct about that one. And by the way, we're going to bounce back and forth between the David Lynch version of this, because there's no escaping it, and Denis Villeneuve. And here's what I will say about, I now have a greater appreciation for what David Lynch produced back in '84, because he had to cover this massive book in 2.5 hours, and he had to figure out ways to get the scope of everything that was going on, from the politics of it, from the religious aspects of it, from the entanglements of everything. And while there was some stuff that he had to obviously cut, he got all the meat and potatoes in there. And he's been given shit about it for far too long. But when I watched Denis Villeneuve, it's kind of amazing to me that he was able to bring all of that into the film and yet not have to have the internal dialogue done as voiceover, that he was actually able to show, not tell. And that was one of the things that really surprised me of this, because the David Lynch version is very dialogue heavy, and when people aren't talking, they're still talking.
My name is a killing word.
To see Denis Villeneuve do it, he's most definitely the right guy at the right time with the right property. But hang
on a second. I just want to touch on something real quick. There's still dialogue, like there's still inner dialogue that you hear even in this version.
Yeah,
and I know it's not as heavy, but again, like you talked about, you know, David Lynch condensed everything in the same runtime as this.
Yeah, he did. And Denis, and here's the other thing I don't get. It's Dune. This has the potential to go one of two ways. The second that they greenlight the second half of this, they potentially have one of the greatest science fiction epics of the last 25 years.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, take a look at what science fiction epics we're comparing it to. You know, there hasn't been shit for a decent science fiction film in a very long, long time. This is going to wind up being compared to Lord of the Rings if it gets completed. If for some reason Warner Brothers doesn't complete this, it's a blip that will be lost forever to the sands of time, and people will always say, like 5 years from now, man, I really wish Denis Villeneuve had gotten to finish his version of Dune because it got this right and that right and this right and that right.
Yeah.
So it's this is a weird animal to try and talk about because it's literally the first half of a story.
It is. But let's talk about it. I mean, the pacing of it, even though it only does half the story, is still good.
Yeah.
After watching this, I was ready to jump into the second half
Yeah.
and roll. You know, so it doesn't feel like 2.5 hours.
It really
which is
doesn't.
nice.
It goes by super fast.
It does.
And the other thing that I dug about it was it doesn't look like anything else. It just like David Lynch's.
Yeah. Go on.
I was gonna say, just like David Lynch's version of Dune had its own very distinct style. They intentionally went out of their way to make sure it didn't look like Star Wars and it didn't look like Star Trek. And this, while
I mean, in that regard, yeah, but anyways.
Well, yeah, in that regard, yeah, this same thing. It went out of its way to not look like it. But the funny thing about it is there's a comic book artist by the name of Juan Jimenez. He passed away last year from COVID. He's been one of my favorite comic book artists for a very long time. And he did a series of stories called The Meta Barons, which follows a family for 5 generations and the rulership of the universe. And I see his style all over this. So while they definitely avoided other movie looks, the Juan Jimenez look is so distinct. If you go and you look at pictures of the fourth quarter and the Meta Baron stuff, you'll see what I'm talking about. You can see his influence all over this.
I'm not familiar with those things, so I can't comment on that. But what I will say is this: I think the costume design in this movie is very dull and very boring. Especially when you had the landing party and you had the one dude that does the change, and the representatives of the what's it called,
The Houses of the Landsrat.
right?
Yeah.
When they came out there, everybody's face is covered. 90% of them were covered with some stupid helmet and shit. And it's like, why? I want to see their faces. I want to see like what they look like, what kind of costumes, dress they got. A lot of the soldier outfits were very dull and kind of boring looking. Even the royalty looked very plain. So
Subdued.
I
won't
like
say plain. I won't say plain. I'll say subdued. It was a very subdued
boring
color palette. It was very
let's call it fucking boring, because that's what it is. It's very boring. It's very utilitarian looking. I mean, it looks very purposeful, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, eh. And again, I'm comparing it to the David Lynch version, which every costume in there is very striking.
Yes. Yeah.
And looks purposeful. And then the vehicle design in this was boring as well, except for the orthocopter, which didn't fit with everything else because everything else is simple shapes, and you had this bug. So it's just like, it's cool, but doesn't work for me in this environment because nothing else looks like this. It's a singular thing. It's not a simple shape. It's a insect shape where everything else is a tube or an egg or trapezoid or something like that. So while it's interesting to look at, it didn't fit. It stuck out like a sore thumb.
I'm going to say that the fault there lies with the text, because even going back to David Lynch's version of Dune, the giant ship that transports the House Atreides folk, it's just a very large tube, and it's from the text that basically all the smaller ships fly up into the giant ship, and the giant ship is what gets folded in space, and that's how they arrive on Arrakis. And to me, it was comforting. It was nice to know that somebody was actually reading the text and following what was there, as opposed to, oh well, let me design this giant Close Encounters mothership with shit all over it and 50 million antennas and so
But
I understand,
is there an
what you're
orthocopter?
saying.
Is there an orthocopter in the book?
Yes, the ornithopter
There
is
is in
most
there.
definitely in the book, and it is
Okay.
described as that. And that was one of the things that when David Lynch did his version, a lot of people were disappointed with the look of the ships, because it's very plainly described as being very dragonfly-ish looking. And the only time that I've ever actually seen it represented on screen as it's represented in the book was the old PC game, where the ornithopter actually looks like the ornithopter. It looks like a multi-bladed insect dragonfly looking thing. But when you see David Lynch's version, it is a bizarre looking spaceship, and the Harkonnen ship is a bizarre looking spaceship, and the Atreides giant ships that fly into the giant space tube that gets folded across space to get to Arrakis, they're very ornate and weird. And I get where David Lynch was going with that. I understand that he wanted to basically say, hey, it's 10,191. Technology is so far beyond what you're used to now that its main purpose is to be ornamental as opposed to utilitarian or functional looking. And that mindset's kind of foreign to begin with. It takes David Lynch to be able to pull that kind of shit off. But I think Denis Villeneuve made it a bit more practical. And you're right, it is practical, it is utilitarian, and the costumes, same thing. But you can see the cultural influences that Frank Herbert was pulling from, that Denis Villeneuve was adapting pretty much as in text. So I appreciate the attention to detail. I can see your point that, you know what, maybe when you see the still suits from David Lynch's version, they're freaky and weird, and they almost look like the musculature of somebody that's had their skin ripped off. When you see the still suits in this, they look like a piece of hardware. They look like a suit that you would wear that is designed to protect you from the elements and gather water. So I understand your point, but I also appreciate Denis Villeneuve, taking his cues from the book and not from David Lynch.
Yeah, but the other thing is with them being so utilitarian and kind of just blending together, it was hard to tell who's the Harkonnen troops and who was the Sardaukar troops, other than the colors were different. And if somebody didn't say Harkonnens, oh, the Sardaukar, I wouldn't have known the difference. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I get it. I understand, but going back to David Lynch's version of it again, the Sardaukar terror troops in there.
Oh, we're horrible looking.
They looked like they were wearing giant garbage bags.
Yes.
And then they had the gas inside of their mask that was, it was all very weird looking. And again, if you're David Lynch, all day long. If you're anybody else, don't even think about it. So
no, that's a big miss there for David Lynch, was the Sardaukar there. We're just stupid looking, but anyway.
I won't say that they were stupid looking. I get what he was going for, because in the David Lynch version of it, the Fremen, all dressed in black still suits, they're very sleek. They're very conformed to a body. You can still make out that it's a human being from a silhouette. Whereas the Sardaukar troops, they don't look like human. They look almost, they have the silhouette of Vladimir Harkonnen, a floating blobby kind of figure. So I get visually what he was going for, but I think that the white armor with the blue accents, which really stands out against the earth tones of the desert that Denis Villeneuve, did in this, I like it. I actually think it is appropriate. Because in this, rather than the still suits being black, they're earth toned. They're very rocky and gray looking. And there's a lot of metaphor going on with the design work of this, that he's implying things about these characters by the palettes that he's using. So I picked up on that, but I'm very familiar with Denis Villeneuve and like the depths of shit that he likes to plug into his movies. So, anyway.
Let's get into the acting here. I really enjoyed Oscar Isaac and
Yes.
Jason Momoa were really good in there. I could have watched those two all day. The rest of them were very directed, very stiff, very George Lucas-like in their direction, and I don't know why. Is that just that guy's style of directing, or what?
No. That's not it. I can tell you what it is, and this again goes back to the text. Is that there's a scene very early on in the movie where he's doing the knife fight with the slow shields with Gurney, and Gurney Halleck basically is spelling out to him, you know what, there's shit expected of you. You can't just, I'm not in the mood. That shit don't fly. You have a duty to your house, to your family, to the Landsrat, to your father, all this. So you know what, not being in the mood, not an excuse. You pack that shit away, you store it deep, and you do what you need to do, because this is not just about politics, this is about survival. So that being said, Jessica getting the same shit from the Bene Gesserit sisters of, you have multiple duties.
Hang on, we'll get to the point of the acting. You're describing the text, but the acting of these scenes is very wooden. I mean, it's very fucking stiff. There's no real emotional level to these people. You're not really getting emotion out of them. Okay, so they get their honor and duty, but they're not really expressing, their distaste of this stuff and how it's being presented to them. It's just they're just kind of there. They're just kind of taking it. So again, to me, that seems like a direction. It's not an acting choice. I think these.
Oh, no. What I'm saying is that I have every confidence that Denis Villeneuve directed them to behave that way with the intent of showing that, they want to scream and shout and, get into big, long, drawn out shot, but that's not how they can operate because of the situation that they're in. So,
but you don't even see that on their face. They're just very stoic. And I can get that, as they're presented as royalty and stuff. You're supposed to behave in a certain way, but it's like, give me something, give me some inkling here. It's just, I don't know. And where I got the most, where the acting to me, like, and again, you have to compare it to David Lynch, is the Jumgabar scene.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's handled much better in the David Lynch version than it is here in this version.
I won't say that it's handled better. It's handled differently. I will say this, from a visual standpoint, the fact that there's what is going on in Paul Atreides' mind, and they had the visual of his hand crisping and the flesh curling up and the blood pouring out. The fact that that's what he's thinking is happening to his hand during that scene is again, it's very David Lynch. It's very in your face. It's very, is that your head? Let me go ahead and screw with that for a little bit.
But you got the same thing in this version, because they show visions of things being burned and singed and all this stuff. Yeah. It's just what's his name? Kyle McLachlan. What's his name? McLachlan.
Yeah.
You can see it in his face. He is in fucking pain. He's in excruciating pain. You can see it in his face.
Yeah.
This other guy, not so much.
I think you need to rewatch that scene, because with Timothée Chalamet, it starts off as pain. It starts off as irritation. It starts off as pain, and again, it's very subdued. It's all subtle, and then it goes from that to defiant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I caught that. No, that was not lost on me at all.
Yeah,
it was actually lost on my stretch of the imagination. No, I caught that. But the sense of pain was not there for me. Like at no point did I feel like he felt like his hand was like legit on fire, like it was with Kyle's performance.
And I think that goes to directing choice. I don't think that had anything to do with Timothée Chalamet, his ability as an actor, because I think he's a really solid actor.
I never said that about the acting. I said point blank, this is a director's choice because it's directed like the way George Lucas would direct his actors.
I don't know. See, George Lucas doesn't really direct actors. He just goes faster, more intense. That's the George Lucas school of directing.
But you get where I'm coming from. It's very
no. I understand. I think I get what you're coming from, but I think that Denis Villeneuve intentionally chose all these much more subdued responses for two reasons. Number one, I think it's more accurate to the book, but then the other reason is to avoid comparisons to the David Lynch stylings of those scenes. And again,
but you can't get around that. It's going to happen no matter what. So, sure. I don't know.
Sure. No. I understand exactly what you're saying. I really do. But I think that it was all a conscious decision, because really at the end of the day, when you're watching this, there's two characters that really stand out. That are just like whatever it is they're thinking or they're feeling, it's right there on the screen. And one of them is Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. But he spent time with the Fremen, and the other one, and I can't wait for part 2 because Stilgar was amazing, and he's in like 3 scenes in the movie, and every moment that he's on screen, you just drink that shit in. And I love it when he walks in to meet the Duke and spits on the ground, and they're like, "Oh, hey, whoa!" And he's like, and then Duncan Idaho's like, "Thank you for sharing your water with us." It's like, this isn't an insult.
Yeah.
This is an extension of friendship. You need to change the way you think. I loved everything about it. It was so subtle. It was so well done. And it was showing that this whole uptight, we're a family of the Landsrat, and there's, decorum that you have to think of, and blah, blah, blah. All that shit went out the window the minute that the first real Fremen showed up on screen. So I am genuinely excited to see, because Stilgar and Paul Atreides have a very tight relationship through the rest of the story from this point on. And I can't say how excited I am to see that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I agree. Jason Momoa and was great. Enjoyed Stilgar, and I really enjoyed Oscar Isaac's performance as the Duke.
Yeah.
Because you got some humanity from him too. He's a little more looser, not quite so stiff, and really let Paul know the importance of embracing these people, embracing the culture, and then taking advantage of the resources that are available. It's like here on was it Caladan? Is that what their home?
Caliban and Arrakis.
Well, so something about Caladan, we got air power and we got sea power. Here we have to harness desert power, talking about the people of the desert. That was really cool. And so I enjoyed that a lot. Going back to not so much the characters, but just kind of like the casting choices.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody here is cast fine. No issues there. I like the look of Paul. I think Paul looks appropriate. Looks more boyish as opposed to Kyle. What else?
Kyle MacLachlan.
MacLachlan.
Yeah.
Seems a little more grown up, a little more manly. But then let's see here. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. She's fine. She's a pretty lady. But Francesca Innes, is the embodiment of like fairy tale royalty beauty, like hot. Like I kind of wish they would have went there, especially since which Rebecca, she's a fine actress, but I don't think she's like, I don't know, maybe she should be better utilized in the second half or something. I don't know.
She's in the first half of the story, she's a background character. She's Paul's mother, and Benny Gesserit, and that's really it. In the second half of the story, there's a lot more that goes on with her and her unborn daughter and her role with the Fremen and everything else. So I don't think her character, because of where this was cut in half, I don't think her character has really gotten that opportunity to show who she is or what she is or how important she is to all of this. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I would have liked more. Francesca Innes in David Lynch's Dune, she was just so crazy hot, you didn't give a shit. She was on screen and that was enough. So, but yeah, Rebecca Ferguson, she was in Reminiscence with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah,
that's her. She's gorgeous. She's a pretty lady. But in this,
she's not Francesca hot though. Just saying.
Again, it's just one of those. I get what they were going for culturally. I get that they were like, had a very specific look in mind, so I understand it. I will also say I think I would have liked a little bit more with Dr. Yui. I think that he was giving a really great subdued performance, but because of his role in the story, we didn't get a lot out of him. Raban and Baron Harkonnen, and I'm going to pronounce it Harkonnen because since 1984, when David Lynch said Harkonnen, it's Harkonnen, even though in this they probably pronounced it correctly to what Frank Herbert had in mind. But I appreciate the fact that David Lynch made them very cartoony villains, very over the top, very, very like chewing with his mouth open and squeeze, and it was. There was nuance, there was subtlety to it.
I think it's a little too subdued though, because like everybody was like dialed back so much. Again, and you never got that sense of scale of how important these events are from these actors. It just didn't come across except for with from the Duke, from like, you know, Oscar Isaac. He's the only person that properly portrayed the gravity of these situations. Everybody else just kind of like, whatever. And Duncan Idaho, like, I never got the gravity of, like, you know, like you said, while that is character, you know, is very caricature and overacting, you know, the squeeze, squeeze. But you knew when he said squeeze, squeeze, that shit was fucking going down. These people are gonna fucking suffer.
Oh,
In this version, you're kind of like, all right, whatever.
I'm just gonna say that I think that Denis Villeneuve got the spirit of the book a little more accurate, because, you know, Vladimir Harkonnen doesn't become one of the most powerful houses in the Landsrat by being cartoonishly evil and fucking everybody over. The other thing is that for the Harkonnens, this was the culmination of the plan that the Emperor had set in motion by ordering the Atreides to take over Arrakis in the first place. So for them, it was like, yeah, this went down exactly the way that we wanted to. So while it's understated, I will also say that I appreciated the fact that it wasn't cartoon villainy in this one. I feel that it's a more accurate portrayal of what the book had to say.
And I think it's one thing that we'll fundamentally always disagree on, where is, you know, accuracy in you know, in relation to storytelling. While I can appreciate accuracy, if it comes across less entertaining, if it's not as entertaining as it could be, I don't know. I don't know how much I want to sacrifice accuracy for entertainment value.
See,
it's a fine line.
I get what you're saying. I'm just going to say that because of the nature of this, and it's going to be in two parts, and because we didn't get the full story, you're not really going to get the payoffs that are being set up now until the second half for a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to reserve judgment on that, because we have not seen the payoffs for what's going to happen now that Raban and the Harkonnens have taken Arrakis over again, and how brutal is that going to be, and everything that goes along with all that. And
I mean,
then
if you watch the first Dune, if you read the books, you know the payoffs. You know, for everybody else as a casual watcher of this stuff, yeah, you won't, but still. Because even then, it goes back to the point of, you know, the entertainment, you know, value as opposed to accuracy. But
I'm just going to say this. I think that where a lot of people think with David Lynch's Dune, it's a hard movie to digest, to like follow. If you're not already familiar with the source material, that was the big complaint about David Lynch's version. I think that Denis Villeneuve took that source material and made it to where if you haven't read the book, now you understand the complex goings-ons, and he didn't beat you over the head with it like David Lynch did. So he's telling that story. He's telling it in a much more nuanced and subtle way, but he's also covering a lot of stuff that David Lynch had to scrap because of the runtime issue with his version of Dune. So again, I'm not hating. I love David Lynch's Dune. I have watched it multiple times. I can quote most of the dialogue from memory to you. The fact that I know that it was Patrick Stewart's second big role in a movie. You know, before that, it was, you know, he was Guinevere's father in Excalibur, and that the guy that played Thufir, the Atreides Mentat, was also the guy that helped Colwyn in Krull. Same actor, same dude. And Brad Dourif was Piter in the original version of it, who has gone on to be Grima Wormtongue and was the, you know, killer, the Zodiac killer in The Exorcist 3, and a ton of other stuff. And I adore Brad Dourif and everything that he does. So love David Lynch's Dune or hate it, the cultural relevance is there. You're never escaping it. Sorry. But Denis Villeneuve, like I said, if the second half gets made and it pays off on everything like I'm hoping that it does, and Denis Villeneuve has a style that it's going to wind up being remembered as like the greatest sci-fi epic. This is the movie that, all right, you want to be considered a sci-fi classic, you've got to be better than this. Because as it stands right now, even though we've only got one half of it, this wins by default over the last 5-10 years. Just because of how interesting and accurate and entertaining it is.
No, and I agree with you. I know it's going to come across to a lot of people like I'm beaten up on this film. I'm really not. I really enjoyed this movie. I really did. And again, when I say that, I watched this full 2.5 hours, is ready to watch the second half, says a lot.
Yeah.
I, it's a solid film. I mean, no doubt about it. But
It's a
again,
very engaging
I have to
film
make
too.
comparisons because there's another Dune movie out there, and it does some things that this one does things that the David Lynch version couldn't do. So I mean, but you got to make those comparisons. But as it stands on its own, no, it's a fine film, and it's a solid recommend for me all day long.
It's most definitely a solid recommend from me. It's like I said, potential masterpiece territory here. If the payoff is as good as what we've gotten so far, it will be considered the science fiction film for the next 10 years, period. I say that you might think I'm premature in saying that, or some of the folks watching this might think I'm premature in saying that. When I saw Fellowship of the Ring, I was like, yeah, this is it. We're not getting a better fantasy film for the next 10 years. And hey,
And we
guess
still
what?
haven't.
It's been 20 years and we still haven't gotten anything that good. So sorry, but you know what? I call them like I see them, and I am seeing this as future classic. Don't let this be Blade Runner 2049. Don't wait for it to come out on Blu-ray. Don't wait for it to drop on cable. This is worth your time now. And yeah, we're going to have to wait for the next one, but this is worth the wait. And if you need to know how it ends right now, watch this one, then go back and watch David Lynch's film, and you'll know all the big payoffs that are upcoming, but you'll also see just how different in tone this is from that original version, and why it takes two movies to tell this story, because there's so much going on that again, David Lynch had to leave large swaths on the editing room floor. There is a version of David Lynch's Dune floating around that is 3.5 hours long. And it has all the restored footage, but David Lynch didn't finish it, so he doesn't want his name associated with it. But it has been broadcast. It's available on DVD and Blu-ray. You can get it. But if you see it, like I have, you'll understand why David Lynch is like, no, the theatrical version is mine. This unfinished thing that somebody hobbled together from my notes and the original script, no, I don't want anything to do with that. This is my version of Dune. It's not Frank Herbert's Dune. It's David Lynch's Dune. Denis Villeneuve's Dune, however, I think is Frank Herbert's Dune, and that's where I want to leave this as far as my thoughts on it. Is that this watches like the book reads. So I'm a fan, but not only that, check out Juan Jimenez's artwork, and you'll see what I'm saying as far as visuals and his look. And I hope Mike throws some examples in there for this video so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But I think his fingerprints are all over this as well. And come on, Warner Brothers, green light this shit. Let's get the ball rolling so we can knock this
don't
thing
waste
out,
any
because
time.
I really want to see where this is going.
Yeah. They should have started the second. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand why they didn't. They didn't start pre-production of the other stuff already. I mean, because there's been a lot of failures here recently. There's a lot of big budget movies that have supremely underperformed.
Yeah.
Of course, we know why they've supremely underperformed, because story. The story
Yes,
of all these movies
most
fucking
definitely.
sucks dick. This has, some of the greatest sci-fi DNA that's out there. And here it is, you can speak to it as faithfully presented. I haven't read the books, so is it faithfully presented?
Wholeheartedly.
And there you go.
Yeah. So yeah. Watch it with someone you love. Watch it high. Watch it drunk. Watch it when you sobering up. This is something. This is what. And everybody bitches that science fiction. It's just so stupid here lately, and it's just big dumb action films and da 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 da. This is not that. Don't let the trailers fool you. There is so much going on here politically. This is so much what George Lucas wanted to make when he made the prequels, but George Lucas couldn't wrap his head around the politics and make them compelling or interesting. This does not suffer from any of that. There is one thing I want to say. There's one line that is presented, and it really shows to me the difference between Denis Villeneuve's Dune and David Lynch's Dune, and that is when Vladimir Harkonnen is standing over Leto Atreides, and he's getting ready to kill him, and he actually does the big reveal, and he calls him cousin. And that whole fact that all these royal families are related in the Landsrat, that was not even mentioned in David Lynch's Dune.
Yeah, I was actually glad you brought that up because I caught that and I was like, is that like just like a metaphor, like they're cousins, or are they literally cousins?
No, they are cousins. And here's the other thing too: Sting, who played Fade in the David Lynch version of it, Fade has not been introduced yet. But in this movie, the Bene Gesserit mother said there are multiple candidates for the Kwisatz Haderach, and Fade, which is again never mentioned in the David Lynch version of it, Fade is one of those other bloodlines that potentially could be the Kwisatz Haderach. So Denis Villeneuve he's filling you in on all this shit that David Lynch couldn't fit into his version of it, that he stripped it down. And again, I appreciate the David Lynch version, but Denis Villeneuve nailed it. So.
All right. Well, we beat this one. There is nothing quick about this at all. It's dirty. This is a medium dirty.
Medium dirty. This is a gentle lover taking his time and doing it right. This is not bathroom stall sex. This is take you home and with flower petals on the floor sex. So Mike, what are we watching next?
Next, we're going to watch The Guilty with Jake Gyllenhaal, and we'll let you know if that one's worth the click or not.
Yeah, currently streaming on Netflix. So you can get our thoughts if you watched it already or want to watch along, and if not, we'll let you know, is it worth it? So
we'll see you guys the next time.